Good. It's my great pleasure to participate in this event organized by British Pugwash and Pugwash Committee of Kazakhstan. Just to remind, a nuclear weapons-free zone is defined by the United Nations as an agreement which a group of states has freely established by treaty that bans the development, manufacturing, control, possession, testing, stationing, or transporting of nuclear weapons in a given area. That has mechanisms of verification and control to enforce its obligations. And that is recognized as such by the UN General Assembly. There are currently 5 nuclear weapons-free zones treaties in force. The Tlatelolco Treaty in Latin America and the Caribbean, the Lendaba in Africa, the Rarotonga in South Pacific, the Bangkok Treaty in Southeast Asia, and the Treaty of Semipalatinsk in Central Asia. Plus Mongolia, which has been recognized internationally as a single-state nuclear weapons-free zone. The Central Asia zone is the youngest. The Semipalatinsk Treaty was signed by all 5 states of our region in 2006 and ratified in 2009. The Semipalatinsk Treaty has a number of unique features. It has established the first nuclear weapons-free zone in the Northern Hemisphere and in the region, which once served as a ground for active deployment and testing of nuclear weapons, and where existed extensive uranium mining for military purposes. The zone is situated in completely landlocked region between 2 nuclear powers, Russia and China. Nearby, 2 de facto nuclear states, India and Pakistan, are located as well. I'd like to note that all zones have a similar purpose to pursuit of the world free of nuclear weapons, but have also added various crucial elements enforcing the NPT regime. For instance, the Tlatelolco Treaty was the first treaty to establish its control and verification agency. The Rarotonga Treaty served as a legal template for the non-testing provisions in other zones. The Pelindaba Treaty introduced provisions on verification of dismantled nuclear weapons. The Semipalatinsk Treaty is no exemption. All verifications pursuant to the treaty is carried out by the International Atomic Energy Agency. State parties are obliged to conclude with the IA both a comprehensive safeguards agreement and an additional protocol. The treaty also required state parties to act in accordance with the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Further, the states agreed to maintain physical protection of nuclear material, facilities, and equipment that are at least as effective as outlined in the IAEA recommendations and guidelines by the Convention on Physical Protection of Nuclear Materials. All these obligations have been implemented. With a little more detail, I will dwell on 2 key issues for all nuclear weapon-free zones: security assurances and international cooperation. The most complicated issue faced by the Central Asia zone, like most other zones, is the provision of security assurances from the official nuclear powers. According to the fundamental principle, nations that have renounced nuclear weapons should be protected from being the targets of such arms. By signing and ratifying the relevant protocols to the zone's treaties, the P5 give legally binding assurances to the state parties of the zones that they will not use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against them. These are so-called negative security. At present, all P5 countries signed and ratified the relevant protocol only to the Tlatelolco Treaty. The protocols to other treaties signed and ratified by only 4 nuclear states: UK, France, Russia, and China. The United States has also signed the protocols to these treaties, but still have not ratified. Therefore, the member states of all the mentioned zones persistently urge the US to complete the ratification procedure as soon as possible. Critical situation now exists in relation to the Bangkok Treaty. None of the P5 has yet signed the protocol because they object to the inclusion of continental shelves and exclusive economic zones, to the restriction not to use nuclear weapons within the zone or from within the zone against targets outside the zone, and to the potential limitation on the passage of nuclear-powered ships through the zone. Nevertheless, some nuclear weapon states changed its position. Last year, China announced its readiness to sign the protocol anytime. The Bangkok Treaty is an indispensable tool for advancing efforts to enhance global and regional peace and security, especially in the Pacific area. That's why it's urgent to find a proper way to bridge divergent positions between ASEAN and P5 countries regarding the signing and ratification of the protocol. I do hope that all parties will both continue dialogue and find ways for appropriate decision. A close situation with signature of the protocol also existed in relation to the Sympalatis Treaty. But unlike the Bangkok Treaty, we started consultations with P5 well in advance and reached a mutual understanding on the articles that are of concern to the nuclear states. As a result, in 2014, during the third preparatory commission of the NPT, the representatives of the P5 simultaneously signed the protocol to our treaty. When ratifying the protocol, a number of P5 countries made national interpretive statements and reservations. For instance, Russia made an interpretive statement that it would not consider itself bound by the obligations stipulated by the protocol in case of any attack on it and its allies. Other reasons for a possible failure to abide may be the entry into ports, landing or transit to the airfields of the Central Asia states or foreign military vessels and aircrafts with nuclear weapons. The UK and France made the reservation that Articles 3 and 5 of Sympalatis Treaty must be strictly enforced. These articles prohibiting countries of the region from developing, producing, piling, and testing nuclear weapons. As well, Article 12, which should not become the basis for action prohibited by Article 3 and 5. Article 12 states that the treaty does not affect the rights and obligations of the parties under other international treaties which they may have concluded prior to the date of the entry into force of the Sympalatis Treaty. These reservations, as I understand, are intended to prevent the possible deployment of Russian nuclear weapons in the Central Asia, in accordance with the collective security treaty. But in my view, Article 12 could not be interpreted as a providing an opportunity for Russia or any other nuclear weapon states to deploy its nuclear weapons in our region. It contradicts the main goal of the treaty, ensuring nuclear weapons-free status of the Central Asia. I'd like to note that China ratified the protocol without any reservations. Our American partners, as a rule, had interpretive declarations when such agreements pass the Senate. And frankly, I can't predict how long we will wait for its decision. I believe that the experience of the countries of Central Asia in signing and ratifying the protocol would be useful in the case of the Bangkok Treaty. That is why international cooperation is extremely important and relevant. Unfortunately, the lack of constant interaction prevents the full realization of the potential of nuclear weapon-free zones. Currently, the main event for discussing common issues and cooperations are the conference of state parties, which are held a week before the start of the NPT review conference. Three such conferences have taken place in 2005, 2010, and 2015. Both conferences, I hope, will be held this summer. Conferences that take place once every 5 years are a useful but not a sufficient mechanism for close cooperation, and there needs to be a stronger, more substantive intersessional process. It is very important. In this regard, Kazakhstan in 2019 held a seminar on fostering cooperation and enhancing consultation mechanisms among the existing nuclear weapons-free zones. The seminar sought to address the existing challenges and discuss ways to improve coordination and achieve more robust international cooperation. As a host country, Kazakhstan made some recommendations. Among them, to resume the tradition of holding the meetings of points of contact for the zones, either annually on the margin of the UN General Assembly or NPT preparatory commission sessions. In the interim years, when no conference of state parties take place, to aim of regularly exchanging information on general activities and, where possible, coordination positions. Next, to maintain efforts aimed at securing signature and ratification of protocols to the treaties. To consider tabling a joint annual resolution at the UN General Assembly. To establish a global website or portal serving as a means of communication among the zones, and also to promote nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation education, particularly among the youth. To undertake activities aimed at further institutionalizing nuclear weapon-free zones treaties by establishing dedicated working bodies. At present, only Tlatelolco and Pelindaba treaties have a full-fledged secretariats. Last year's, the 5th anniversary of the signing of the Semipalatinsk Treaty was marked. In joint statement, the ministers of foreign affairs of the state parties reaffirmed commitment to a peaceful and secure world free of nuclear weapons. The interest in expanding partnership with existing nuclear weapons-free zones, including the signing of memorandums on understanding between Central Asia Zone and the Pelindaba and Tlatelolco treaties, was also expressed. By the way, such MOU was signed between Afcon and Apanal last year. I believe that another opportunity for expanding both inter and intra-zonal cooperation could be forced towards first the creation of new nuclear weapons-free zones in other regions of the world, primarily in the Middle East, and second, the voluntary accession of all countries of existing zones to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Regarding the last option, I'd like to inform that recently, as I remember on February this year, Kazakhstan called on the partners from the Central Asia zone to become a parties to the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons Treaty, and thereby make a significant contribution to strengthening international security and non-proliferation. The main goals and objectives of non-weapon-free zones, non-nuclear weapon zones, are in line with the spirit and the principles of the treaty. Moreover, the obligation that the state parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons must undertake have been already fulfilled by the participants of the Central Asia Zone, and they can join the treaty without undertaking any additional substantive obligations. Today, these proposals of Kazakhstan are being considered by our partners. To the end, I'd like to quote UN Secretary General Mr. Guterres, who recognized the zones as a landmark instrument that represent an excellent example of the synergy between regional and global efforts towards a world free of nuclear weapons. Thank you for your kind attention.